can get up the real enthusiasm for it anymore. Because in some respects, I think people had an expectation of what that breakthrough meant, as though it would represent a final triumph over our own sort of vulnerability and helplessness within the universe. And when it didn't, people thought, like, what about Mars? You're like, I don't know.
Okay, so it had a singular place in our dreams that you can never duplicate.
I think, listen, it's always going to go down as one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of the country. But then, after a certain point, too, science fiction takes over, and you're like, why can't we travel just by thinking about it? You know, what about hyperdrive? It's in the intervening 40 years, the advancement has not kept up with the promise of what that was. But which, by the way, I mean that solely based on the unrealistic expectations of what we have for scientific achievement.
Neil, I gotta say, I'm still a little stuck on the last segment. I heard the words birth sack, and no one picked it up.
What's the matter?
No, I just, that you don't hear those words every day, and we're all from the same birth sack is I don't know, a little troubling to me.
Well, in a cosmic figurative sense, because we all share the same ingredients from the same region of the galaxy that birthed the solar system. Can I use that word?
Yes,
I know I'm a guy, and I don't feel the pain when I use the word, but I mean, do I get permission?
Yes, you do. But to say this, I think the moon would become special again if we figured out how to commercialize it. If we can get a casino up there, if we can get a Hard Rock Cafe going, if we can get a Gap moon.
When we come back.
Well, you know, Neil, you've said before yourself, aside from war or religion or vanity, it's rare that a civilization will muster enough effort to create something truly monumental. The space program originated from war. And now, if we're going to go, we might have to just stick with vanity because religion doesn't.
No, there's also money. I mean, Leanne is right.
Profit.
I joke with her, but she's right. What drives huge expenditures of investments is huge expectations of return on those investments. The old ROI, return on investment. So I wish it weren't that, because I like exploring space because it's deep and cool. And we have a talk show host, one of the most famous there ever was, who is similarly inspired by these thoughts and these mission statements. So,
do you think lunar birth sacks would make a lot of money?
If we say give birth on the moon, where you have 1/6 G, you got.
Well, how does this affect the pain factor? If we can.
Well, what happens to the baby?
It floats. Babies float.
But they'll have the umbilical cord. They call it the umbilical cord to the astronauts.
Yes, it'll be tethered, so we don't have to worry about them floating away.
When we come back, more of our interview with Jon Stewart here on Startalk Radio.
Just like yesterday, and I get on my knees and pray.
Bringing space and science down to Earth. You're listening to Startalk.
Startalk Radio. We're on Facebook, Startalk Radio. Like us there. I also tweet the universe at Neil Tyson, Neiltyson. Mostly the brain droppings of an astrophysicist, but if that's okay with you, check it out. And my two guests, comedian Leanne Lord.
Yes.
You're in the Twitterverse as well, aren't you? I bet you're called Leanne Lord.
I bet I am.
Leighhann.
Wow, no, astrophysicist guy, no. No, Leighann, Lord, as in I've got connections.
And I just learned today, my man Charles Liu, astrophysicist, are you a tweeting maniac or just...
No, like once blue moon.
Okay, and I know how long that is. So you are, and your Twitter handle, Chuck Liu?
That's right.
Chuck Liu, Chuck Liu.
Yes, indeed.
So we've got interviews with Jon Stewart running rampant throughout this hour, and what intrigues me is first the fact that he likes having scientists on his show, and it's a political show, so there's this intersection between what the scientist does and the politics of the world. And politics is all about how to divide people, and scientists, by and large, is trying to find the one truth that ultimately all scientists agree with. So I want to get back to you, Charles. Do you see any science versus politics that never resolved itself, or that's a dangling sore point in our culture?
It's a continuous back and forth.
Give me your best examples.
Oh,
there.
I'll tell you. Bad policy leading to good science. How about 400 years ago when Galileo got funded by the Doge of Venice to make telescopes as an early invasion warning system, but instead use it to look up in the sky and discover all kinds of things about the universe?
Okay, so that's an interesting interplay there.
And then in our lifetimes,
wait, just to make it clear, no one had a telescope before this.
That's right.
And so the Doges of Venice wants to protect this city, and with the telescope you can identify enemy ships much farther away than ever before.
That's right.
So he doesn't see it as, gee, I can discover the universe. The Doges of Venice says, I can use this for defense.
That's right. So military funding led to astronomical discovery, the likes of which had never been seen before. And then even in our lifetimes, the Strategic Defense Initiative. Remember Star Wars during the Reagan
SDI.
era?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that money has led to the discovery of
which was highly
exoplanets.
controversial in the scientific community at the time.
That's right.
On the correct assertion, that you can't make an impervious bubble around the Earth, force field, like on Star Trek.
That's right.
That prevent that missiles bounce off and fall into the sea.
Right.
And so we all knew this, but it was nonetheless funded.
That's right. It was lousy policy, but it led to the technology that has led to things like adaptive optics and active mirrors that allow us now to find planets beyond our solar system, which now number almost 2,000.
Right.
It's really quite amazing how good science has come from bad policy over the centuries.
Okay, and how about the opposite?
Has bad science ever? Oh, sure. How about the guys in the tobacco companies who say that nicotine is not addictive? That's been funded by plenty of people, too.
Okay, so that's
right?
very bad science.
We are humans, and scientists are not ordained, like we said. They're not holy.
By the way, you say we are humans, like there are other people who might not be humans. Like,
we just want everybody else who thinks that scientists are not human to remember that scientists are human. We are
Leanne, are scientists human in your life experience?
Oh, that's true. We better let somebody who's...
someone who's not a scientist weigh in on this.
Yeah. I really think the overwhelming perception of you guys is glasses and pocket protectors. And the fact that you guys are both wearing glasses really shouldn't be construed at all. Mm-hmm. But there's a way to... You guys get dehumanized a bit. You really do.
Well, and so part of the advantage of going on these talk shows is people see us in the context of real life politics and culture and society.
Right. We have opinions. We make mistakes. We sometimes make great positive things. And it's all the mixture of all those things that makes science what it is.
I would add, by the way, that when a scientist makes a mistake, it's in almost every case another scientist who finds that mistake, so that the system has built-in error-correcting mechanisms that other branches of life and culture don't.
That's right.
You don't get that in religion at all.
No.
But this is why, for example, the climate change conversation has become steering more and more clearly towards something that's scientifically correct as opposed to politically correct.
But it makes for much less fun arguments on the 24/7 talk shows.
Absolutely true. We learned about the importance of greenhouse gases from Venus and from Mars.
Venus is 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook a 16-inch pepperoni pizza in 9 seconds.
Yeah.
I did the math on that. You can trust me.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Actually, I got 8.6 seconds. I'm sorry, Nick.
Meet me outside.
Wow. It's a geek off, everybody.
So, all right, so you had global warming. Any other sort of issues that could have been politicized, but in the end science triumphs?
Well, I'll give an example of astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
When we
The universe.
are asking ourselves, what is a planet? It could easily be politicized for whatever reason you want. But in the end, we wound up discussing it like, I don't know, adults, shall we say? And eventually we came down with an opinion, and people still disagree, but in the end, it's not, knives and pitchforks.
Well, plus, Pluto doesn't really care what we think of it.
Precisely.
And I think it's perfectly happy out there. We've got another clip of Jon Stewart where I asked him just about his opinions about people and how that might plug in to a new capacity to send people to Mars. Let's find out.
I know you're not without opinion about people who populate this world.
That's right.
And who influence its fate. So if there was a rocket ship going to Mars, who'd you put on that first?
Well, you just came up with the game show idea. That is, if that's not the newest Mark Burnett edition of Survivor, I don't know what is. See, here's the problem you have with the Mars thing.
What?
You see, your question intimates that it's exile. The first person to Mars is
Who's a hero.
right. So
point.
that's something that has to be earned.
Okay, so you leave him here on Earth. That's the punishment.
That's exactly right. We have the person earn it, have them go through 10 years of training, and then at the last minute go, you know what? There's too much weight. We can't get rid of it. It turns out we needed a ratchet set, so you can't go.
So we don't send people. We send only the brave and the few to Mars and leave the rest behind, apparently. But that kind of that kind of rings.
Yeah, that sounds very Rapture-like.
Rapture-like.
Yeah, and you know what? That actually brings up something I have
Wait,
to
wouldn't
apologize.
the Rapture faithful be surprised if, in fact, they were lifted off of Earth and landed on Mars?
Yeah, that's totally not what they were expecting at all.
200 degrees below zero, no oxygen.
It's a little chilly, Lord. It's a little chilly. Thought your love would be warm. But that's actually why I was late today and completely unprepared. I was really kind of hanging out waiting for the last-minute Rapture. I didn't think I would have to be ready for anything after
Just in
yesterday.
case you were the last on the list. And
yeah,
get to you.
It's like, hey, is there a bouncer here?
So,
are we going to get...
Charles, you're still here, so you weren't raptured either.
I wasn't. No, I must have evolved my position here on Earth as opposed to have been divinely ordained.
I quickly just went to Deborah Harry's Rapture from the...
Oh, man.
That's cuckoo.
That's what I had done. We've got to wind down this week's episode of Startalk Radio. Startalk Radio, do you know, is partially funded by the National Science Foundation, who deeply cares that the world becomes at least a little more scientifically literate. And I've got to send out my tweet of the week. Let me see what that has to be. To turn current events into comedy, one must understand the news more deeply than the journalists who simply report it.
Very nice.
That will be my tweet of the week.
John
This
will be pleased.
is Startalk Radio. Thanks, Charles.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Leanne Lord.
Thank you.
We are signing out. As always, keep looking up. Neil deGrasse Tyson signing out.
For any occasion.
Postulating theories, formulating equations.
Well, Chase Tristan, it's no blizzard. Eat a chicken gizzard with a girl named Lizzie.
Dropping science like Galileo dropped the orange.